also from my side, everyone. I'm David. Thank you, Nereus, for the introduction already. Great to be here with so many people. And today, as Nereus already told, I'm going to talk a little bit about the question how to increase community impact. But let's start a little bit with the introduction of who am I. It's also good to know. I'm David. I'm an impact researcher working for the Impact Center Erasmus. We're located in Rotterdam at the Erasmus University. And what we as an organization do, we conduct research and we also educate students and professionals about basically these three themes: impact thinking, impact measurement, and impact steering. And our goal is to bring or to make the bridge between scientific knowledge and also practice and try to let them influence each other in a good way. So we're trying to make scientific insights practical, and we're trying to bring practice back into to science as well. And I'm personally working as a researcher, so I'm mainly doing research for different projects, and one of my focus points is projects focusing on youth. So these are very different, but for example, people or young people who aren't in school anymore, like what can we do or what programs are effective to helping them? Or also we have a big program in the Netherlands where I'm from, focusing actually on helping young people understanding what they want to do later in life. So I have some experience in that field. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. Let's dive into this topic, and I thought it's maybe good to start with the basics, namely what actually is impact, or how do we understand this like term which is used so often and which is used in various ways, which is fine, but it's maybe or it's sometimes helpful to also create some clarity. And the definition we are using in all our work is this one. Impact is the additional effect of an organization on stakeholders and society at large on the economic, social, and environmental dimensions. And important to know is also regarding this, that this impact, which is told about in this sentence, it can be short-term or long-term, it can be direct or indirect, it can be positive or negative, and it can be intended or unintended. Usually when we're talking about impacts, we're talking about the intended and positive effects, but it's good to know and important to know that, well, from projects, from organizations, there of course can also be negative effects. There may also be unintended positive effects, which you're just overlooking or you're not seeing yet. So yeah, this definition of impact is really broad. And yeah, that's the definition we use. And with this definition, which is important, and I will talk about that more, is basically every organization will have some impact, or in some sense, maybe the positive impact is very limited, or the negative impact is very big, but every organization will have impact. And that's why it's also important to really make choices about what is the impact I want to reach. So we'll go into that a little bit more. But first, one thing I think is important as well to understand this a little bit better is, why is impact actually important, or why is it useful? And that comes down to like two things. And that's, at the one hand, you can use impact to prove, you can show to financiers, to partners, to just everyone, you can communicate about this on your website or your social media, maybe to prove that you're actually reaching some impact, or that you're really making a difference, as you said also as an answer on the Mentimeter. So that's one side of why impact can be useful, and the other side is to improve, and that's what I'm going to focus on mainly today, since the goal is to answer the question how to increase or to improve community impact. And if you want to improve, you need to know, like, what are we working towards? So that's what I just said also about, it's important to make choices. It's important to get a clear focus. Like, what do we want? Do we maybe want to make volunteering more popular? Or do we want to promote social contacts between different people? Or do we maybe want to promote social engagement, or promote equal opportunities for people with different backgrounds? So that's important to think about. And that's also one tip I already want to give, is like, start thinking about this. Like, what impact do we want to achieve? So of course, there's all different impacts from your programs, but what's the impact you're after? What do you really want to or hope to achieve? And it doesn't mean that other impacts aren't valuable or aren't happening, but it's just it really helps to focus on something, because then you can also improve it. You can't improve everything to have an effect on everything, so that becomes really difficult very quickly. So to make choices is really a first step into improving your impact. What we're saying is this: impact thinking to us is very important, and it's a really important first step, which often gets missed in practice, if you want to improve or if you want to get a better grip on your impact. And impact thinking is basically all about the question, which is stated here as well: why do you do what you do? And what do you think you will achieve with what you're doing? And it should be possible for you, and maybe you already know this, it should be possible for you to explain this clearly to, let's say, your grandmother as well. So it should be quite easy and quite easily said and told and understood by others. And so, yeah, what impact thinking basically is then is you try to describe how you expect to reach your intended impact. And what we're seeing in practice is that a lot of organizations are more or less falling into this cartoon, in which on the upper left corner there's a difficult sum, and right under there's the solution of this sum, and then in the middle it says then a miracle occurs. And the teacher in this cartoon says to the student, I think you should be more explicit here in step 2. And that's something we see in practice a lot as well, that people have beautiful activities and they've really thought them through and they're enthusiastic about it, and then they have some impact goal, or they want to improve this or that. They want to make people enthusiastic about volunteering, or they maybe want to connect different groups which usually wouldn't meet each other. But yeah, how do these things relate together? So that's important to think about. And that also means you need to be critical about your own project. A lot of people are enthusiastic, of course, about their project. They have a lot of drive and they want to have an impact. But it might be good to sort of step back sometimes and think like, okay, I'm of course I'm positive about my project, but is it really working the way I think it should be working? Let me give a short example from my experience. This is about encountering. We researched a project in the Netherlands, and one of the goals of this project was that young people would encounter people they normally wouldn't encounter. And the goal of that was to build empathy and understanding for others who might be different than you. And this project thought that by organizing group trainings and volunteering activities with different people from different backgrounds, that this would happen, that empathy and understanding would be generated. But if you start critically thinking and maybe doing some research as well, you discover that encountering new and different people actually needs a lot more attention. It's not just bringing together people, but you need to have some way of really getting to know each other. You have to build trust between each other, because otherwise the encounter can also have a negative impact. So yeah, this is an example of how it can be helpful to really think this through. Well, how then? How can you do this impact thinking? I think I gave some examples, but a useful tool is a theory of change. Maybe a few of you have heard about it. I'm not going into very much detail about this method. I think there's a lot of online resources about this, so you can find a lot about it on your own, but this is usually the general structure of it. So you start with your ambition, and then there are a few steps in between, and at the end of this chain, there's your impact. And what we're seeing in practice is that often the outputs get mistaken for impact. And with the outputs, we mean the really practical results of your activity. So say you organize a training and 100 people attend that training, then they say we generated impact because 100 people came. But impact actually goes a step further and talks about, okay, what happens with these people? What's the change that's happening through this training you're giving? To make it a little bit more practical, I filled in a short example. And here we have an organization with the ambition that says we are promoting social contacts of elderly people. That's what they want to achieve. And therefore, their activity, what they're doing is they're organizing a weekly coffee moment. And well, the outputs are quite clear. They have this many participants and they have this many coffee moments organized. And then there you see already that doesn't lead immediately to those social contacts being more, that there are more social contacts. There need to be happening a few other things in between, like these weekly coffee moments and the fact that you have the impact of more social contact. So I wrote a few down here, and I think three maybe important ones here is that the coffee moments actually are fun, that people come sustainable, that they're not just coming once, but coming more often, and that people are actually getting to know others, that they're not just sitting there and staring into space. So by writing this down in this way, you really have a good way of thinking about the impact you achieve and how you achieve that. And like in this way, you can also see that, okay, like these things, fun, sustainable, coming and getting to know each other are important to reach our impact. So in our activities, we maybe should make the opportunity to maybe play some games so it's more fun for people. Or it's more, we need to really mix people up so they get to know others and they don't just talk to the people they already know. So yeah, this hopefully is a tool you can use to really think about it. Like, okay, what do we want to achieve? What are we doing? And what needs to happen then? What are effects that need happening before we reach our impact? And a small tip I want to give you here is also to really start small. Often this can be quite overwhelming, and you think, well, where do we start? But by starting small, by maybe taking just one impact you want to achieve and thinking this or making a theory of change for that specific impact, of course, that won't cover your whole project, but that learns you how this way of thinking works. And then you can also maybe for another impact goal or another intended impact, you can work this out as well. So yeah, my suggestion would be just to start with like one impact goal and try to work out like how are we reaching this goal with the activities we're carrying out. And lastly, then I want to touch a little bit about impact steering. Like, well, let's assume you've created the theory of change, and the great thing about this is that it can also really guide your strategic choices and be really helpful to actually improving your impact. Because there are actually two questions you might be able to answer when you have made a theory of change. The first question is, are we actually doing the things right? And this question is about improving activities so they become more valuable or they are reaching their goals better. So maybe when making this theory of change and maybe also talking to a few people, of course, you figure out that you can improve a certain training by having more speakers from practice in this training or letting participants have a bigger active role instead of them being consumers. And this way you can alter this training a little bit so it becomes better suited for the people who are attending. A second question you can ask yourself is, are we actually doing the right things? To me, this is maybe a more interesting question because in this way you need to investigate if your activities actually reach your intended impact, because sometimes the activities may not even help or maybe even hinder the intended impact you have. So maybe you need to change certain activities. So an important quote my colleague often uses here is to fall in love with the impact you want to reach and not the activities, because otherwise you're stuck with these activities you really like, but it hinders your impact. So really fall in love with the impact you want to have and then make activities which really help to create this impact. So maybe an example with this one is you find out that in order to reach your impact, which is for young people to really explore what they want to do later on in life, you see that like personal coaching is very valuable and trainings and workshops are less valuable. And in your how you're organizing your project. You're using like 80% of the time to organize these trainings, to invite speakers, and only 20% for this personal one-on-one coaching. So if you see that the coaching is actually more helping, then you could redistribute this time and money. You could say, okay, we're organizing a training less, or we're going to make it a little bit easier, less like work heavy, and we're going to focus a little bit more of our time and energy in this one-on-one coaching. So yeah, I want to conclude with this by thinking about your impact and getting a grip on how you are actually reaching your impact. You can start making these strategic choices to get to improve the impact you want to reach. And to conclude, I want to mention this as a practical tip as well, is if you want to improve your impact, you actually will need to manage your impact. And that's not a one-time activity. That's like something that's regularly coming back. So you maybe start with making this theory of change, but then you find out when talking to people, oh, maybe we need to improve things or we need to change. And that's like a continuous process. So it's not a one-time activity, like by just having one afternoon, you're done with your impact. But it's, especially when you want to improve, it's a process. That's what I wanted to say. If there are any questions, I don't have the chat open. Maybe I can stop screen.